Governor Crist, why is this relevant in a race for the U.S. Senate?
Well, if trust and confidence in an individual, what they say and what they do isn't relevant, then I don't know what is. It's very important that people who put themselves up for public office understand that they're asking for the trust of those individuals they're asking to vote for them. The Speaker just misspoke yet again. He said all these things have been accounted for. There are $34,000 in expenses from that $600,000 slush fund that have not been accounted for. We don't know where the money went. We don't know what happened to it. And the Speaker won't tell us. You know, he claims that it's all accounted for, that these allegations are not true. They're absolutely true. You know, the other thing that I think we need to talk about here today is the fact that the Speaker continues to tell us that he wants to work for the people, he wants to be a good conservative. I think we can both agree we're both good conservatives. But what he has also done is he's utilized funds, double dipping, as you mentioned earlier, for plane flights. You know, thousands of dollars where he billed the taxpayers of Florida. He also billed the Republican Party of Florida. Only after he was caught did he take the steps, at least he's told us he has, to go ahead and repay the party. I thought he should have repaid the taxpayers. That's who he worked for. It's a real simple difference.
Let me ask you to respond to that and also to the question as to whether or not you are amending your tax returns, Mr. Rubio, to reflect some of these questionable finances.
Well, let's talk about those for a second. All of that money has been accounted for. I wish we would have done a better job of reporting. There's no doubt about it, and I'll be the first to admit it. But it has all been accounted for. As far as the flights are concerned, even the chairman of our party has said that they were inadvertent. Now, let me talk about something else, Chris. This election is about trust. Who do you trust to go to Washington and stand up to Barack Obama and offer a clear alternative? In 2006, Governor, I voted for you because I trusted you when you said you would be a Jeb Bush Republican. Your record was something very different. You signed a budget that raised taxes. You tried to oppose a cap-and-trade system in Florida. You appointed liberal Supreme Court justices to our Supreme Court.
Who are those? Who's the liberal Supreme Court justice?
Justice Perry to the Supreme
Speaker,
Court.
Justice Perry, who Jeb Bush appointed to the court originally,
you not only did that,
a liberal?
In addition to that, you worked with
That's
Acorn and
astounding.
groups like that to give felons voting rights in Florida. And finally, you campaigned with Barack Obama on behalf of a failed stimulus program. So it is about trust. Who do you trust to go to Washington and stand up to Barack Obama?
I like the Speaker, Chris, if I might. I like the Speaker said that I would utilize those stimulus funds in order to help the people of my state. He admitted he would do the same thing.
Let me interrupt if I might, because we're going to get to that right now, which is this has been a big issue in the campaign so far, and it is the issue of your support in February of 2009 when President Obama was fighting for it. And here's the famous, some would say infamous picture of the hug when you came out and supported the Obama stimulus package. By the start of this year, Florida had received $8.2 billion in stimulus funds. Governor Crist says that has created or saved 87,000 jobs, including 26,000 teaching jobs. Before I let Governor Crist answer, Mr. Rubio, why is $8 billion and 87,000 jobs bad for a state that has 12% unemployment?
Well, here's what's bad. If it's bad for America, it can't possibly be good for your state. Let me tell you why the stimulus has failed. The stimulus has failed because since that famous day in February, where the governor campaigned with Barack Obama on behalf of the stimulus program, 211,000 Floridians have lost their jobs. Today, just this week it was announced, we have the highest unemployment rate in Florida's history. But here's the centerpiece of the stimulus debate that we need to talk about. We're running for the United States Senate. And so the choice for Republicans in Florida is, do you want a candidate that would have stood up to Barack Obama, voted against the stimulus, and supported something that would have cost less money and created more jobs? If that's the candidate you want, that would be me. Or do you want the next Republican senator from Florida to be someone who would have voted with the Democrats for the stimulus package? And that candidate would be Governor Crist. That's really the choice here.
Governor Crist, your Republican predecessor, Jeb Bush, says that by embracing the Obama stimulus, you undercut Republicans who at the time were fighting for more tax cuts and less government spending. Let's watch.
When Republicans were fighting in a principled way against that, Governor Crist, incorrectly in my opinion, supported the stimulus package. That was a mistake. And I consider it unforgivable in the sense that we're now in a battle for our country's future.
Governor, how do you respond to Jeb Bush, who says it was unforgivable, and also how do you respond to the fact that despite the stimulus, this week, as Mr. Rubio points out, unemployment in Florida is at an all-time high, recorded high, 12.2%?
First, let me talk about my friend Governor Jeb Bush. Governor Bush was an extraordinary governor, did great things for our state, particularly in the area of education. I was proud to be his education commissioner during that time. People have different opinions on different things. Not everybody agrees on everything all the time. And I think it would be, foolish to think that everybody would. Now, what I want to talk about, though, is the fact that my opponent talks about, we need to look at spending. Well, I think we need to look at spending. Look at the record of my opponent when it comes to what he was paid as a lobbyist. My opponent was a lobbyist while he served in the Florida House of Representatives.
Can we please, I'd like an answer to the question about the stimulus.
Yeah, well, I think I've answered it. You know, we utilize those monies just like Haley Barbour did in Mississippi, just like Sonny Perdue did in Georgia, some of these wild-eyed liberals who understood they have a duty to the people of their state. They have to put people above politics. And as governor, you've got to make tough decisions. I made the tough decision to utilize these funds to help the people of Florida. I know the unemployment rate is bad. I know the economy is tough. I understand all of that. If we had taken the Speaker's approach, we would have 87,000 more people on top of that 12% that would be unemployed in Florida today. 20,000 of those, as you indicated, school teachers who are teaching our children. That's awfully important for us to be able to continue to do that.
Let me follow up, and then I'm going to let Mr. Rubio respond. Only 3 Republicans in the U.S. Senate voted for the Obama stimulus when it passed in 2009. Olympia Snowe, Susan Collins, and Arlen Specter. Are you saying that if you had been a senator, a Republican senator in the U.S. Senate in 2009, you would have voted for the stimulus?
Yeah, that's pretty clear. I mean, you know, I think it was the right thing to do at the time. You have to go back and remember what was happening in our economy. It was literally falling off the cliff. I mean, some of these, ideas to try to prop up our economy, frankly, began under the Bush administration, President Bush. It was the TARP. They wanted to make sure our financial institutions did not collapse, that people didn't have to have fear and a run on the banks or something of that nature. And when it came to the stimulus, it was money to help our economy. Things have started to stabilize now, and they're getting better in Florida.
Mr. Rubio.
Well, I don't know how you define stability. Having the highest unemployment rate in Florida's history, certainly not stability, especially to the 1 out of 10 Floridians that can't find a job. The stimulus is a failure. And I think in this conversation, we've established a critical difference in this campaign. If I had been in Washington, D.C. as a U.S. Senator, I would have voted against the stimulus. I would have fought on behalf of alternatives that were offered by Republicans that would have cost less money and would have promoted more jobs, quite frankly. Had Charlie Crist been in the U.S. Senate, he would have voted for the stimulus. And so for Florida Republicans, the choice is pretty clear. Do you want your next U.S. Senator to be someone like me or like the gentleman that you've named to the U.S. Senate who would have voted against the stimulus and fought against it? Or do you want someone who would have voted for the stimulus?
This brings us to the bigger issue that I want to discuss, and that is what role you see for yourselves if you're lucky enough to be elected the next senator from Florida. Mr. Rubio, you say you will stand up to the Obama agenda and that Governor Crist won't. You say your favorite senator is Jim DeMint of South Carolina, who opposes the Obama agenda right down the line. Doesn't that in effect mean, though, that if you're elected, it's more partisan gridlock?
Well, first of all, partisan gridlock is not something I'm in favor of, okay? But the problem is it depends on what you're standing for. What are you fighting for? I'd be more than happy to work across the aisle to do things like lower the capital gains tax, lower the corporate tax, flatten the tax rate, lower all of these other taxes that make America increasingly an unfriendly place to do business. And if the Obama administration tomorrow announces that that's their agenda, or the leadership in Congress does, I'll be more than happy. I will be thrilled to work with them. But what they're attempting to do is to fundamentally redefine the role of government in America. And we can't cooperate with that. We've got to stop that from happening, because once we cross a certain point, we can't turn back.
Governor Crist, you say that the senators that you admire most are John McCain and Lindsey Graham, and in your recent State of the State speech, you said this, and let's put it on the screen. Problem solvers recognize that important achievements often require consensus, and consensus sometimes requires concession. What you seem to be saying is you'd look for areas to work with President Obama, areas of consensus and areas of concession.
I would work to make sure that I stand with people who will help the people of my state and my country. I am a pragmatic, common sense conservative.